Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we present our plan to tackle the growing challenge of rough sleepers in the province of Saskatchewan. My name is Heather Barlow, and I'm from the Ministry of Health, and I'm joined by my colleagues Irina Larinovich from the Ministry of Government Relations, Abimbola Ojo from Social Services, and Sushant Sharma from Finance. Next slide, please. So moving on to the issue, rough sleeping and encampments in public spaces across Saskatchewan, and especially in the cities of Regina and Saskatoon, has been increasing. This is a growing public health and safety challenge without clear and sustainable solutions that meet the needs of this unique population. Today, we will be addressing how the government of Saskatchewan can balance its approach to tackling the issue of a growing number of encampments while protecting the dignity, safety, health, and security of everyone involved, as well as limiting disruptions to the community at large. Next slide. We would like to start by giving an overview of the affordable housing situation in Saskatchewan, as our provincial situation is quite unique. According to a survey conducted by the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, Saskatchewan had 4,500 vacant affordable housing units as of November 2021. In Saskatoon, 250 social housing units run by the Saskatoon Housing Authority sat vacant as encampments in the city grew. As you can see, a lack of affordable housing is not the key issue, leading to increased rough sleeping in Saskatchewan. Next slide. Next, we wanted to outline the two primary challenges that we have found with these encampments. First is the cyclical nature of the problem. In November and December 2021, individuals sleeping in these encampments were moved to temporary shelters, which is obviously a necessity in our very cold winters. Stakeholders, including the Saskatoon Fire Department, are predicting that when the weather warms up, again, these individuals will end up back outside and encampments will reemerge. We know that this is very likely because of the lack of medium and long-term solutions to support these individuals. Additionally, some individuals do not want to move elsewhere, likely because of the sense of community that exists in these encampments and an inherent mistrust in government programs and officials that exists among a large portion of encampment residents. Second, there also remains a lack of data available on the number of rough sleepers throughout the province. There is also a lack of concrete data on the needs and motivations of this population. Next slide. As would be the case across Canada, rough sleepers come from a variety of backgrounds and circumstances that have led them to living outside. Many rough sleepers are also experiencing mental health and addictions challenges and are high needs individuals that require a variety of supports to meet their individualized needs. In Saskatchewan specifically, 90% of the people who were living at Camp Hope in Regina during 2021 were Indigenous. Finally, we know that this population is growing. As you can see in the point in time count shown on this slide, there was an 1,100% increase from 2018 to 2021 in the number of rough sleepers in Regina alone. Next slide. The new Saskatchewan Income Support Program and COVID-19 have been two factors that have intensified the problem of rough sleeping in Saskatchewan. Under the new SIS program, there was a move away from direct payments to landlords. In September 2021 alone, 31% of SIS tenants did not pay their rent and 18% more only paid a portion. Many stakeholders believe that there is a link between this new program and increasing rates of homelessness across the province. And of course, COVID-19 has also further intensified the problem. Next slide, please. Finally, on this slide, you can see a breakdown of some federal, provincial, and municipal programs already in existence. While there were two recent one-time funding enhancements in the National Homelessness Strategy to help provincial and municipal governments address challenges related to encampments, these programs have fallen short of meaningfully addressing the unique needs of rough sleepers and stopping the cyclical nature of the problem. I'm now going to pass it on to Irina, who will outline our vision. Next slide.
Thank you, Heather. Given Saskatchewan's context and recent developments, we envision a solution which is community-driven and collaborative. Rough sleeping is a complex issue that requires a multidimensional approach. Past attempts to contain the issue with the help of law enforcement did not help and perhaps even further diminish the public trust in the government. We believe that involving community-level representatives, including collaborating with Indigenous organizations, will help build quality and trustworthy relationships instead of delivering prescriptive programming. We also know that people who are sleeping rough in Saskatchewan are predominantly Indigenous, so we need to develop a culturally appropriate and trauma-informed solution. And of course, nobody's situation is the same, so we need to offer help which is client-centered. Lastly, it has to be proactive in addressing the actual cause instead of being reactive in managing the symptoms. Next slide, please. If we choose not to act, we will continue to face several risks and higher societal costs. This includes the risk of rough sleeping continuing to grow in our province, as well as several negative externalities and disruptions in terms of safety and public health. We know that the current response strategy is not effective and efficient, which is costing the government a lot in terms of emergency services while not resolving the issue. It's like putting band-aids on broken bones. There are also risks and costs to the broader public, including its confidence in the government's ability to effectively resolve the problem. Next slide, please. With that, our team has prepared a few policy options. Option A is creating a new program called Bridging to Sustainable Independence. This includes leveraging provincial funding in the short term and gradual rollout. There are a few stages: creating a designated zone for encampments as an interim measure, soliciting third-party agencies to build relationships with the rough sleepers, and getting the third-party agencies to deliver wraparound supports to address individualized needs and help bridge the rough sleepers to housing and more sustainable living. Under option B, the government of Saskatchewan will primarily engage with the federal government to advocate for additional funding to support rough sleepers. Municipal governments are positioned uniquely to deliver support, giving their expertise and knowledge of local needs. Therefore, it is proposed that this potential federal funding goes directly to municipalities to deliver place-based strategies. Municipalities will have the flexibility to choose what programs are a fit for their area. And finally, option C maintains status quo, which means no additional funding or action. But with this option, there are significant drawbacks of not acting, as discussed previously. Next slide, please. For comparing the three options, we have selected several criteria which we think are essential in achieving best results. Both options A and B are strong in terms of financial sustainability. The first option implies that Saskatchewan has to allocate funding to this program, which would be a new expense, but we estimate it will lead to savings and strong outcomes in the long run. Option B's disadvantage is that there are no guarantees of how much and for how long the federal funding could be provided, as well as how it supports municipalities in the short term. Further, negotiations with the federal government could be lengthy, which delays the initiation of support. In this slide, again, option A is the only that allows for immediate actions that focus on the root cause. And lastly, as our research indicated, rough sleeping is not primarily about the lack of housing in Saskatchewan, but about the additional supports which are needed along the way. With that, we identified that option A, which entails wraparound supports, would be most effective at addressing the root causes of the issue. As you can see, option A meets all of the criteria which we have identified as necessary for our approach. And with that, we would like to recommend it for your consideration. Now, I would like to pass it on to my colleague, Abimbola, to explain the recommended option further. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Irina. Our recommended option involves leveraging provincial funding to create a new program that will bridge rough sleepers and encampment residents into more sustainable living. The program will be structured around 5 pillars. First, There will be the provision of inclusive shelter solutions, such as designated encampments that will be coordinated and managed by third-party service providers. Subsequently, clients will be transitioned into culturally appropriate residencies with common areas that would replicate the community feeling found in encampments. Where possible, individuals with particular relationships may be assigned to live with their preferred groups in the same residence. These kind of arrangements are usually favored by Indigenous people. Once housing is settled, the program will provide wraparound supports to clients based on individual needs assessment. These may include physical and mental health or addiction treatments, tailored income assistance, as well as social support to help with day-to-day living. The program will be administered by an appropriate third-party, nonprofit, or community-based organization with experience in managing such social programs. An Indigenous organization is preferred given the demographics of Saskatchewan's encampments. We suggest that the Ministry of Social Services provide oversight to this third-party organization. This program will be rolled out in phases, starting with the two major cities in Saskatchewan, Regina and Saskatoon, before it is expanded to other larger cities in the province. The program will be technologically driven to assess needs and support performance, measurements, and evaluation. Progress of each client will be tracked by assigned case managers to provide data on recovery and possible graduation from the system. Next slide, please. If the program's recommendation is accepted, the program can expect to provide favorable outcomes to clients, government, and the public. Clients can expect respectful engagement with zero use of force that would facilitate their recovery and reintegration into the community. The program will provide the government with much needed data points on this vulnerable group of society and help to better understand the complexities of their needs. Housing units currently going unutilized will be repurposed to provide shelter, thereby leading to cost savings from renovations and provision of emergency services. Next slide, please. A few potential risks that we expect from establishing this new program are the risk of third-party accountability, lack of consensus among stakeholders, and low program enrollment. Our plan to mitigate the third-party accountability risk is to set measurable targets and evaluation criteria for the third-party organization in collaboration with the municipalities. Lack of consensus can be mitigated by holding regular working group meetings to give stakeholders an opportunity to brainstorm and provide practical solutions to challenges. At the moment, there is considerable reluctance by rough sleepers to sign up to any government program. To address this, the program will be administered by third parties that understand the population and communities they will be serving, thereby motivating participation. I will now call on my colleague Sushant to take us through the implementation plan. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Abimbola. Our implementation plan aligns with the City of Regina's plan to end chronic or episodic homelessness in the next 5 years. We propose to implement our recommendation in 3 phases. In the short term, the province will create designated encampments in Regina and Saskatoon with the help of the municipal government. These camps will have 24/7 support from healthcare and social workers to monitor any issues such as reducing risks of drug overdoses and calling emergency services when necessary. Since the third-party service provider will most likely be an Indigenous community-based organization, they will have the trust of the rough sleepers to enter into community agreements to create roadmaps towards transitioning into permanent housing. Moving on to the medium term, our objective would be to transition people from designated camps to inclusive housing solutions. During this period, we'll also work on delivering customized wraparound supports, focusing on harm reduction and monitoring of the client's recovery progress. In the long term, we'll work with clients to achieve sustainable independence by continuing to provide wraparound support, and training towards skill development in preparation for seeking employment. We hope some individuals can graduate from the program at the end of 5 years. However, we are also mindful that some individuals will always require support, and because of this, we lobby the federal government for more funding to continue the program beyond the 5 years. At the midpoint of the program, we'll evaluate our progress in Regina and Saskatoon with the intention of adapting the program to other cities. Next slide, please. Before presenting our financial plan, it is important to highlight the impact of a small proportion of users in the overall healthcare costs in Saskatchewan. As it can be seen from the graph, it is estimated that 5% of the population in Saskatchewan with complex healthcare needs due to lack of housing and social supports utilized and resulted in 66% of the total healthcare bill of 3.4 billion. Now, this translates to 2.2 billion of the costs that can be significantly reduced. Next slide, please. Moving on to our financial plan to utilize existing and upcoming infrastructure on housing already identified by the government. Our program will run in parallel with other homelessness strategies. We've estimated the cost of the proposed solution with an assumption of supporting 500 rough sleepers in Regina and Saskatoon over the next 5 years. The current scenario puts great pressure on our health and emergency services. Based on our estimation, we have found that maintaining the status quo will cost the government approximately 174 million over the next 5 years. We believe our new program will lead to significant savings of 82 million with the added benefit of addressing the root causes of the problem and thereby significantly reducing harm to the clients. Next slide, please. Our implementation plan is incomplete without a collaborative and community-driven stakeholder engagement plan. While the province will help us with funding and oversight of the program, the municipalities will be engaged to assist with the selection of service providers and to bring them together with Indigenous peoples and rough sleepers. We envision community organizations will play a similar role as they did when encampments were first set up in these cities and shall inform them about our short, medium, and long-term plans. Their support will help us restore and build trust with rough sleepers. We'll engage community members and professionals to assist with the delivery of wraparound support and for reporting progress on the physical, mental, and financial well-being of the clients. Most importantly, we'll consult with the Indigenous peoples to bridge the gap in our understanding of the client's needs to ensure the solutions are culturally appropriate. All in all, we'll be guiding our engagement process to ensure rough sleepers are holistically transitioned to more sustainable living. Next slide, please. We hereby conclude our presentation and would like to thank you all for your time today. We'd be happy to take any questions for further discussion on this now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, members of the Tiger team. That was very interesting and very comprehensive. So I'm going to turn it over to the members of the panel to pose their questions. I want to start with Pam McCurry.
Okay, thanks, Jim, and thank you, team. It was an excellent presentation, and I'm just curious. I noticed that one of the options that you discarded was involved going to the federal government for more funding, right? Because you thought that that was a little too risky and it would tangle you up for too long, and you need some earlier solutions. But then you brought it back. You brought it back as part of the long-term strategy under your recommended option. So that's great. But what I'm wondering, given the savings that you're projecting by following the option that you're putting on the table, the $82 million, it's going to take a lot, it seems to me, to have the federal government pitch in. Like, you're saving money, but we need more money. So kind of what are the hooks that you would use to convince the federal government to contribute more money for the longer term solution? And are there any legal obligations that might be built in that?
Thank you so much. That's a great question. Definitely, we decided to go forward with leveraging provincial funding for the time's sake. But looking in the long run, we think that the current federal programs which address homelessness, they're kind of missing the piece where people are getting the supports, the social supports. So when approaching the federal government, we would like to mention that this is a very important component to make sure that the current programs work. Plus, once we have a few years of the implementation, we'll have a lot of data which will show that we have a good model. And this model can be potentially replicated across Canada. And I think this is going to be a very interesting proposal to the federal government, because we can put forward something that can be actually scaled across the country.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me turn now to Alan Northcott. Alan, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for a great presentation. So one of the steps along the way in your proposal is to create designated encampments, which, you know, it's obvious the benefits that would have for the people who are sleeping rough. But what's a little bit less clear to me, at least, is the effect that that would have on the community in which those designated encampments exist, the residents, the local businesses. So could you say something about, I mean, this might be in your engagement strategy, but how you would expect a message to the community, and how you would expect to be able to bring them on board?
I can take the question, and thank you so much. Definitely the municipalities will be a key part of deciding where this designated encampment will go, because we know that they know the residents of their city best and where that would be most optimal. But we would definitely be continuing to engage community partners and just talking to the general public, because we know that they are definitely affected by the issue and the growing issue of rough sleeping across the province. Sorry, do you mind repeating the second part of your question?
I was just wondering, what about how do you factor in consultation with the immediately affected local communities who are living right next door to those encampments?
Right. So definitely this designated encampment would be important, because it would overall reduce harm to the population when everyone can be in one single location. And so that would definitely be one of our, I guess, key messages and factors that would draw these people to this designated place.
Okay, thank you. Turn now to Trina Fraser. Trina.
Thank you for your presentation. I did ask this question before, but I'd like to ask it again with this group. What role is there for the rough sleepers themselves in resolving this challenging issue?
Who wants to take that?
Thank you very much for your question. The role that we see for the rough sleepers themselves is, we believe that the rough sleepers at the moment have considerable reluctance to even want to sign up for any form of government support. And so we believe that due to the specific and uniqueness of Saskatchewan, most of the rough sleeping population are Indigenous. And so we believe that with the help of the community, with the help of the Indigenous organizations, we can co-opt the rough sleepers to come to participate and be in the designated encampments in the short term, and possibly see this solution that we have brought forward as a favorable one that is respectful of their particular needs, that would also potentially provide recovery and reduction in any form of harms. And so we believe that due to the way that this program has been packaged, the rough sleepers will potentially be very willing to participate and to enroll in this program.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Let me turn now to Susie McDonald. Susie.
Yeah, thanks very much for the presentation. I note that when you talked about potential for future federal funding, you talked about it going directly to municipalities. And certainly as the provincial government, it's often our preference that the funds would come directly to us and then to municipalities. So just wondering what the thought process was about why provincial government is not best placed to spend those funds.
Thank you so much for the question. So the thinking there was that we would like to give the flexibility to municipalities to decide what is the best solution for them. Like every city or every town in Saskatchewan, they have their own local, specifics. And that's why we thought that maybe municipalities have to make those decisions as opposed to us applying a lens which like one size fits all. And it's very much in line with the same approach we would like to give when working with rough sleepers. We would like to hear their voice. We would like to know what's important for them. So we want to make it very, very much individualized.
Okay, thank you, Irina. I'll turn now to Janet Golding.
Great, thank you. And thank you very much to the team for your presentation. It was super interesting. I wanted to just get you to reflect a little bit on the message that you gave at the start, which was the availability of affordable housing is not the issue in Saskatchewan. And so your proposal, as I understand it, is to kind of move individuals who are in sort of illegal encampments to places, designated places where they could be continue to sort of live together and have the opportunity to build trust with community organizations. I'm wondering though if it wouldn't be an option though to sort of take that some kind of approach, but move them into permanent housing, build that trust with community organizations as a sort of step further into your solution instead of normalizing encampments for a short period of time.
What do you think about that, folks? Reaction?
Thank you for your question, and it's a very good question. Our proposal is a short-term solution in terms of for the designated encampments. It's supposed to be maybe over the summertime. And that's because we have noticed in our research that encampments usually pop up in a cyclical, usually seasonal manner. And so that solution is just to provide a location that they're comfortable with in the short run, and then subsequently move with their support and with community agreements and with trust, start to then move them to more sustainable housing solutions that will provide them with community bonding and community living as part of what the housing options will be. And so we envisage that there might be community areas within some of these housing solutions that allows bonding and friendships to continue, and such support are very vital to recovery. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll turn now to James Hughes. James.
Thank you. You've told us that the trend in rough sleeping is up. That in fact, if I didn't get this wrong, 1,100% increase in rough sleeping over the last few years. And you signaled that there's potentially no reason to suspect that that may not continue. So my question for you is, while you have advised us on how to address current rough sleepers, what about future rough sleepers? And how do you shut off the tap?
Thank you for that question. One of the things that we came about in our research is that there are issues with trauma, there are issues with addiction and mental health issues that sometimes leads to this particular situation from happening. So when we did our research upstream, there is the need to encourage literacy, encourage education, encourage more I would say solutions that relate to individuals and people living in their own houses being better equipped to provide, I would say on a nuclear level, the society has to do better. And that comes from the government. And that comes from providing support for the society to do better. That comes from early childhood education, that comes from promoting literacy and all of these other upstream related issues. And we believe that if those things happen, and that's not really in our purview for this particular work, but we believe that if those things happen, it would help to reduce and sort of close the tap. But that's a much larger issue that involves collaborative effort with different levels and different groups. And so that's what we believe.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, go ahead, James. James, go ahead. I'm sorry. Somebody else was going to say something.
Yeah,
Alan.
I would just like to second the thoughts as a Minister of Finance. If we can go back to slide number 16, please.
Yeah. Oops, no. Whoa,
Slide number 16, please. Yeah.
16, yeah.
16.
There we go.
Thank you. So as we can see from this graph, Saskatchewan has a relatively small number of people, and those who are vulnerable people who are actually incurring huge medical costs to the system. And these people, I mean, we believe we have a good housing infrastructure based on our stats and the research, but we are falling short in addressing the basic issue, which deals with addressing the mental and financial needs of vulnerable people. And because of that, a lot of cost is coming on the system. And so we need to address what is the missing link in the whole system. And that is why we propose to provide the wraparound support as a solution to our option.
So
thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's it.